What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the BTR Garage. My name is Justin. Today we have an awesome video for my Ford F250 Powerstroke. We're going to be installing brand new, massively powerful batteries, probably some of the best batteries you can buy for a diesel pickup truck. We also have an entirely new power cabling kit. We're going to replace all of the battery and power cables in the truck as well. And we picked up a new battery tester. We're going to show you how to test your old or existing batteries to see if they need replacement. Let's go ahead and get started. So the batteries we're upgrading to today are these Odyssey Extreme AGM2 batteries. This is model ODX AGM 65. The CCA rating on these massive batteries is 950. That's higher than pretty much any battery that I could find for these trucks. What that means, the cold cranking amps or CCA, that's how much cranking power the batteries can deliver to the engine during startup. This is crucially important in cold weather when the engine is more difficult to start and you need all that extra power you can get to turn the engine over, get it cranked up and running reliably. So awesome batteries should provide plenty of cranking power. And we also have this battery tester from Schumacher. What this will do is allow us to test our existing batteries in the truck or any other vehicle for that matter, to tell the status of the battery, whether it's good, bad, or dying out and needing replacement. This will easily and quickly let us know if we need to replace the batteries. The custom battery cable kit will also install. This is from custombatterycables.com. They have battery cable kits for all kinds of trucks and vehicles out there. And this is a full replacement kit for all of your power and battery cables. All of the fittings are well made and of high quality. And then you have an extra set of battery terminals as well, heavy duty, thick terminals and battery mounts. My existing power cabling and terminal ends are getting corroded and worn out. They're due for replacement, so this stuff should work out really good. So first thing we're gonna do is grab our battery tester and test our existing batteries. You can see on the range of the battery tester here the different states that the battery can be in. You got bad, weak, okay, depending if it's a 12 volt or a 6 volt battery. Now keep in mind on first use with this thing, it may smoke a little bit and they do get hot to the touch. So you wanna make sure you hold them by the handle on the top. But we'll go ahead and connect it up to the battery. Positive terminal first, followed by negative terminal, and then there's a little button on here that will press for no more than 10 seconds and read the reading on the battery tester. So we got it connected. We're gonna hit our load button, that puts load on the battery, and take a measurement. Looks like it's in the green, about 800 to 900 cold cranking amps on the tester. Let it go, disconnect everything, and set the tester aside. Remember, again, it will be a little bit hot. So we have the first battery tested. I know these batteries in my truck are good. I actually replaced them just a few years ago when I did have batteries die on a road trip. They do the job. They don't have quite the cranking power that the new ones do. But anyways, we're gonna grab another battery, hook it up to the tester, another battery that I'm pretty sure is dead. So hopefully we'll see the bad range when we do the test on it, but let's grab that one and we'll take a look at it. Okay, so we have our dead battery. We're gonna hook it up here and see if it comes out good or bad. Got the cables hooked up. Give it a test here. And with the load button down, hopefully you can see that it has basically nothing. It's not even in the bad range. So even without the load on it, it's below the bad range for a 12 volt battery. So that's what your bad battery is gonna look like. While we're over here, we're gonna hook it up to my new Odyssey battery and just see. I'm gonna take a wild guess that this one will show up good. So yeah, we're way high in the green, almost at the 1000 CCA, not even under load, and then under load, looks right around, I don't know, 900 or so CCA. And this thing is getting hot real quick. So first thing we're gonna do is take out the old batteries, which is super simple. We're gonna need a ratchet with an extension on it, 10 millimeter for getting the tie down for the battery off, and then a 8 millimeter wrench will work, or ratchet, to get the battery terminals themselves off. So with the batteries out, we'll take a closer look at the battery terminals here. You can see how they are a little bit corroded. They got some old gunk and grime, and these things are just not nearly as beefy as the new ones that we have. So we're gonna start taking out the old battery cables and power cables. Looks like we might need to take off the spare tire tool rack on top of the radiator here. the little brackets to get to this big wire underneath. And of course we have some cables that go kind of down the sides towards the engine to the starter and probably to the engine block for a ground possibly, but we're gonna have to dig in the engine bay to find out where those go so we can replace them. But we're gonna get started on one side and kind of go through that and then grab the cabling that goes over there for the new cabling for reinstallation and kind of show you how it all goes together. Removing the tools from the top of the radiator area is pretty straightforward. You have several 10mm bolts and then a single wing nut for one of the tools as well. Once you have those all pulled apart, getting the brackets and the tools off is pretty easy. So with that off, we now have access to this big cable right here, which goes around the back of the radiator here in between the radiator and this front shroud. You can kind of pull back this shroud here and you have access to it in the back. We're gonna have to detach it from some clips and then pull it out. So now we're gonna start tracing out cables. The first one we're gonna go after is this negative terminal on the driver's side. Oops, you can kind of see it goes down into the hole there and all the way down to the engine block. We're gonna go under the engine and show you where it connects. So if we look up underneath the engine here, you can see the bolt right there behind the radiator hose. So that bolt right there is the one we're going to remove to get rid of that negative cable. Obviously we'll have to run the new one down here, but that is where it attaches. Now with that one removed, we should be able to fish it up through the engine bay. Next, we're going to remove this small cable from the main positive to positive battery cable. This long cable actually goes from positive terminal on the driver's side to the positive terminal on the passenger side. But this cable here actually goes to the wire harness, so we're going to retain that one. The new cable kit does come with connectors to connect these back to the new terminals. Moving over to the passenger side, we'll do the same thing here by taking this top bolt off of the old terminal. This cable is also retained. This goes to one of the relays. We'll use the connectors that come with the new kit to reattach that to the new battery terminals. And this whole piece is our positive to positive long cable that goes to the other side. It's attached to this massive cable, which is what goes to the starter, which I'm guessing is going to be the most difficult one to get out. Before we tackle the starter cable, we're going to remove this ground wire from the body over here, as this attaches to the larger ground wire, which also goes down to the engine block, which we'll get from underneath the truck again. So we're back underneath the truck now. You can see where that negative terminal or that negative cable goes. It's right here. Hopefully that's coming through on the camera, but it's on the back side of this connection here. So we'll take that nut off on the front. Now there is also a chassis ground that goes along with that. That is right here. This wire here, we can lift up maybe that that hose, but it's right behind there. The bolt is on the top of the frame there. We'll have to get a wrench up in there and loosen that off, but that's the small cable attached to the main one here. And by the way, this bolt here on the passenger side is a 15mm. The one that was on the driver's side was an 18mm. We'll see if we can break this loose here. Pretty easy. Now the one on top of the frame, you kind of got to do by feel. It's hard to get hands up in there, but it will come loose. Just got to kind of get a wrench up in there. It is a 10mm wrench, and then start loosening it up slowly but surely. It'll come off. Those guys removed, we should be able to fish out our negative terminal here, or negative cable rather. Yeah, pretty simple, came right out. Last cable we got to take out is the gigantic starter cable, which is this guy here. It goes down in the engine bay to the starter. We'll go under the engine and show you where that is at. So you'll find the starter back behind the axle here next to the oil pan, and you'll see up on the back of it there's a couple bolts that we'll need to remove, the main one being the main starter cable. Get some light back in here, geez. And then there's a little wire on it as well. Those there are the ones we'll remove and then get the new cable routed down in there after we pull this one out. And the wrench you're going to want to use on the small bolt is a 10mm. The larger one is a 15mm. Getting your hands in there to get on the tools is the hardest part, but just takes a little bit of time and patience. And moving to the other side of this bracket, the first thing we'll do is actually remove the transmission oil cooler lines from that bracket mount as well. They just clip into this little piece right here. That way we can pull the whole starter cable down and out. I have to probably do that off of camera because it's a little bit tricky right now, but you get the idea. We'll pull it out and bring it out the bottom of the engine bay here. And on second thought, we can't do that actually because of this little wire attached to the main starter cable. This is connected up in the engine bay, so we're going to actually reverse this process and go up with the cable and pull it into the engine bay. All right, so fishing up from the top. The hard part will be getting the bracket through the engine bay here because it just wants to catch on everything, of course. But slowly and carefully, making sure to unsnag it from things that it catches on. You should be able to get it pulled out, and there's our starter cable end that we just unhooked. So we have the cable completely out of the truck, well, almost. This is the cable that goes across to the driver's side, and then the rest of the cable that goes to the starter. So this is that little wire I was talking about. It's actually integrated into the harness here, so we're gonna have to cut the harness open and pull that wire out because that will have to be retained as it also connects to the starter. So there's the little wire on the starter side, and that goes up back into here. We'll take that out of that harness and then start preparing the new wiring. So here is a laid out view of all of the cabling, the stuff that just came off of the truck, and then obviously the new stuff on top. That is our driver's side battery up on top, our passenger side battery on the right. These are our cables that came off, our starter cable. We're gonna take this bracket and attach it to the new cable up there with a similar length so we know how much cable here to use so we can remount this where it belongs. Here's the negative cable with the small grounds to the chassis. The new cable has the same thing right here. There's obviously much bigger wires, much thicker and much longer, so we're gonna have to figure out how to make all of that work with the extra slack in the wire. And then of course our giant starter cable here. You can see the terminals are much larger on the new ones compared to the old one. And then backing up, this is gonna be our positive to positive long cable that goes over to the other side. The equivalent one is here on the new cable set. There's the end up there. That's gonna go around and connect to the positive on that side. And then our negative cable, negative battery terminal, that goes to the engine block ground. The same one in the new kit. Over here, our engine block side, and then battery side, all of these attached to these heavy duty military grade, as they call them, terminals. We'll start by fishing the starter cable back down into the engine bay, making sure our bracket doesn't hang up on anything, of course. Once I get the starter cable attached down below, we'll take our little small wire that also goes to the starter and fish that down and tape it around the larger cable just like it was on the original. So the new starter cable is now connected. You can see that big guy right up in here. We wrapped that heat shroud or that heat cover over it as well, so it is protected. I'll try to get up in there with a closer view. And the regular starter solenoid, that small wire, is back on as well. Next, we're gonna fish the negative battery cables down below where the starter cable goes. This one here says the negative cable engine end. So this bronze cable right here, this is the one that goes on that mount bracket down below. And then this is the same one that comes off that cable that goes to the chassis or the frame mount down below. So we'll run this one underneath. So we got that cable down in the lower engine bay. This is the one we're gonna take and attach to, get my arm up in there, this hole here. Actually this bracket, oh boy, stuff's falling on my face. So the bracket will go up there with that negative terminal attached to it. So we'll get the bolt for that and hook up the cables and get that put in place. And then the frame or the chassis ground, we'll have to put this one on top of that frame rail again. It's kind of a blind spot, so we'll put that one on and get back to the top of the truck. Actually, before we move to the top, we're gonna fish this big negative battery cable to the engine ground and hook up the last piece underneath before we come back up top. So we've got that bolt tightened down, the negative battery cable attached to the engine block. I actually scored the block face of this with a little wire wheel brush just to get a nice clean contact patch for the cable. But there you go. We have one more body mount on the side right here where we'll bolt up the small wire. I'm gonna use a little wire wheel brush just to score the face of the metal so we have a good contact point for the ground. So now we're gonna bring the batteries into the truck because we gotta start figuring out how to connect all of these cables to the new terminals. We do have the long positive to positive wire that goes across from one side of the truck to the other. So we kind of got that just laid out here right now. We're gonna grab a battery. Oh my gosh, these are so heavy. All right, I believe it's gonna work best with the positive to the inside of the truck. So I think that should work with the positive over here on my right and the negative on the far side here. We'll have to figure out how to finagle these cables around with the new terminals to get everything to line up correctly, but we'll start doing that and bring this big guy over here as well. We're gonna start with the negative cable first on this side, or the negative cables. We do have the little one here and then the larger one in the back. We'll take our battery terminal and we'll place the cables on either side of the large bolt here. So we'll unscrew this, attach the thick cable to this side, and then the smaller cable to this side, and then we'll be able to drop it down onto the battery. And what I did was I ended up routing this little cable around the back of these electrical units here. And one thing I did forget was our fancy terminal covers. Put those on first now. And then we can hook up our terminal like we just went through. Go ahead and set that on top of the battery terminal. We won't tighten it down all the way quite yet because I do want to remove it before hooking up the positive. But there we go. That's kind of how that will look. So we'll pull that guy off, put the cover back on, and start working on the positive side here. We do have to connect the glow plug relay cord as well from this, which actually attaches to this little guy here. They come with these little adapters. That little plate right here, that's where we can connect the smaller cables. And we'll attach the two larger cables to the ends, just like on the other side. Now with the big positive cable that went down to the starter, this guy here, I actually rerouted it. I pulled it down into the engine bay and fitted it up in front of the battery. So right down here instead of in the back behind the battery here. So the original cable came up back here behind the battery. I think it'll fit a little bit better coming through the front of the battery down here, and we can bring these two together on the terminals into the positive cable right there. So we'll grab our positive labeled terminal, and basically it'll be like this. We'll connect both of the big cables to either side, and then the small cable from the relay, the existing cable that we left in there, that will attach to this little bracket here with a smaller bolt attached to it. Take the nut off and take the bolt out, and then we'll make sure to put our boot on. This one's going to be really tight, it appears. So we've got the boot on there. Go ahead and start sliding things together. Got both big cables around the bolts. Attach our little brackets. There we go. So we can go ahead and drop that onto the positive terminal. Attach the cable from the relay. That was one of the existing cables that we left, and we're going to clean off the face of this a little bit. And then we can attach that guy to the little special brackets that comes with the kit. So there we go. That should be good for that. We'll not tighten it down all the way just yet. So on this side of the truck, I think we can put the battery with the positive terminal up here in this corner towards the outside of the truck. If we pull away the little clip from this little cable that's down here in the front, we can get a little more play with it. So I think that should work. We'll grab the battery and toss it in there. All right, so that looks like we should have the room to get this guy over to that far terminal, and the negative terminal has plenty of cable to work with, so we'll figure out how to line that one up. So we'll start with our positive terminal side, get our boot on there, get this little guy pushed through, try to straighten it out a little bit as well. And grab our positive terminal. And we'll need to use the other little extension piece on this side as well for the existing cable that we left. That little cable was one of the existing ones we left behind that goes to the wire harness. We'll make sure to clean this one up a little bit as well. And there you go, the cable finished for this side. Test fit it, make sure it's good. Looks like that works all right. We'll pop this guy off now. We'll get the test fitting done. Set that aside and then work on the negative terminal here. This one might be a little bit tricky with the way this cable is routed here, but all right, with a little bending and finagling of the cable, we can get it lined up a little bit better. So we should be able to do something like that. Get our boots, throw it on. So it seems like this way is going to be our best bet. So the cable's attached like this. And mounting it like that onto the terminal should work all right. We've got the cable kind of routed, snaked around on the inside here. We'll do a close-up view of that to show you what it looks like. So we've got everything in place, all of the terminals lined up and properly routed with the cables. Now it's just a matter of tying up this big cross cable that goes from one side to the other. We got to get it tucked back here behind the radiator, get the spare tire tools mounted back with the brackets here, and then the trim piece up here as well, and then tighten down all of the terminals. And then we should be good to start the truck up and see how things are working. As mentioned earlier, this is where we're going to reuse these T-clips, which will attach that long, heavy wire that goes from positive to positive on each battery. Tape those clips around the wire, something like that, and then you'll be able to clip the little ends into the holes on the bumper frame. They're kind of underneath what we're looking at right now. I unfortunately didn't get a good video of that part, but that's where those go, and that will keep that long cable in between the radiator and the upper body frame in place. Don't forget your terminal protectors as well, little fuzzies. I didn't have any grease for the terminal, so I'll put that on a little bit later, but this should do for now. And remember to use the locking nuts when you are tightening down the battery terminals for the final time. So we'll go ahead and do that after getting everything put back into place. Tighten down those locking lug nuts, the terminal ends, making sure everything is good and solid. Last but not least, we'll pull the boots over, get those tidied up, and that's what the finished product looks like on the driver's side. Once we're finished up on the driver's side, we'll move over to the passenger side and basically do the same thing all over again for these terminals on this side, again using those locking nuts to make sure we tighten down the terminals onto the battery. And as you can see, I had to modify the terminal cover there a little bit just to get it to fit over because of the extra wire on that particular positive terminal. With the final boots over the terminal, we are all set, and there is the finished product for the passenger side battery. Well, that was pretty good, pretty quick start compared to the old batteries. Not a significant improvement, but definitely felt stronger. So yeah, good news. So there we go. We're gonna wrap this video up. We got brand new Odyssey batteries, mega batteries on the truck, 950 cold cranking amps. If you're in cold weather, I highly recommend upgrading to these batteries if you're having cold start issues. Obviously, upgrade your cables and your wiring to the batteries and to the starter like we did with the custom cable kits if your cables and terminals are worn out or corroded. All in all, combine those two upgrades and we have a good solid starting system for the truck for a long time. So thanks again everybody for watching. I hope the video was helpful. If you have any thoughts, comments, or questions, please leave them down below. And do remember, this job takes a little bit of time, mostly because you're fishing cabling and wires in and out of the truck. But again, hopefully the video will make things a lot easier for you. Take your time, be patient, and everything should work out just fine. Obviously the batteries are a snap to remove and reinstall, but a great upgrade for the truck overall. So stick around, we got more good videos coming up very soon. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please consider hitting that subscribe button down below. Turn on your notifications if you want to see the latest content coming to the channel. Stay safe out there. I am checking out, and we'll talk to you all next time.